I could never have known what was coming on the heels of having held the hand of the person holding the highest non-sworn rank within the Food Services Unit, FSU. Dale Turner struggled with being a leader, and I had him in some form of handheld training for about a year and a half. I had first attempted to extend his probation and was told I couldn't do that. I then added a 3-month hands-on training I called informal performance mentoring to help him, followed by 5 months of scaled-back duties where others did some of his work, including me. When I wanted to go full performance mentoring as a last-ditch effort to try to help him, I initially got the blessing from my own executive supervisor and then suddenly pushback from them both, neither wanting to acknowledge his lack of integrity, ability to lead, and negative statements and actions toward me.
They'll give a stern lecture to someone who's doing something wrong. To someone need additional training. Stop thinking that everyone can be rehabilitated.
I could never have known that this executive supervisor, Josie Woolham, a person I had once worked with as a peer of the same rank, who had also praised my work back then and when she first arrived as my supervisor and saw all that I had accomplished. She had been moved out of a more prestigious assignment at the Internal Affairs Bureau to a position where she would share with another partner working at Men's Central Jail, only to then be promoted to commander and placed as my supervisor. Where others rolled their eyes and said, "Uh-oh, be careful, she has no idea what she's doing," I drowned out the comments and let things unfold in the way they were supposed to.
I confronted Lee Baca and Paul Tanaka, and I did it when I was just a lonely sergeant, and I told them, "You're wrong. This is going to lead to the downfall of the organization." I was laughed at, ridiculed, and ignored, and then retaliated against. The woke mentality of the Board of Supervisors and all of their flunkies, they're surrounded by all their deputies ascribe to the same ideology. You don't have any counterpoint of view there.
I also could never have known that an only 6-month-long assignment for my then sergeant, now sheriff of Los Angeles County, Alex Villanueva, in 2004, would remain with him for so many years of bitterness that it would bubble over into my life again all these years later. I would have settled in that I had reported his lies back then, and maybe he had changed, maybe he'd grown, gotten a clue. I could not have been more wrong. Oh, the irony.
Don't be a jerk of an employer is the number one thing. There's a lot of people working in concert and coordination. That includes the LA Times. That includes people that obviously want to defeat me electorally. That includes the board-appointed Inspector General and the Civilian Oversight Commission. A lot of people working overtime.
The LA County Sheriff taking on LAPD.
Imagine that.
Yeah, just all out brawl. No guns, no badges.
No guns, no badges, just one-on-one?
Mm-hmm.
They'd have one advantage.
Oh, really?
What is it?
We have a lot bigger, more diverse employment group, more females.
Young black men are dying at the hands of young black men 99.9% of the time. Has nothing to do with law enforcement.
So here I sit, placed under investigation and transferred from my assignment as the unit commander for LASD's Food Services Unit. I went from being in charge of close to 200 staff members with food preparation and shipment to over 60 locations countywide. 1 hospital, 2 cafes, 5 jail facilities, and also 23 station jails in 35 contract cities, all while in an uphill battle with primarily the supervisors and managers within the unit. Even my own newly promoted, by me, secretary, as well as others among the staff, they were all seeking limited responsibility and being comfortable in receiving a paycheck while doing as little as possible each day. Here I sit, filing a lawsuit for wrongdoing. But hey, the guy working in the position before me said the place ran itself. Translation for me, just let them do whatever and enjoy your great schedule, county car, and live the good life hidden in the corner that was FSU. What a disservice that would have been to our mission as a department overhaul. The statement that I made the call and they came for me was after realizing the timeline of events unfolding. In hindsight, it now all makes sense. It was a 0 to 60 mile per hour drive on the supervisorial freeway by Woolham. That's what began all the commotion and sudden problems with how I ran the food services unit. Prior to this, my other 6 supervisors, 7 total in 3 years under the new sheriff. Those other supervisors, even those who seemed to have their own agendas, gave me compliments about successes with the unit. I knew from the start that I would be met with pushback, opinions, criticisms of not knowing the food industry. Once I learned about FSU being a unit which had been sorely mismanaged for decades. Add to this the perception of the unit by LASD overall, and you get a place where people do the bare minimum and expect maximum support with those efforts. I remember one of the operations assistants saying that food services was the red-headed stepchild of the department. Sadly enough, this same operations assistant had allowed an employee to pretend to be on light duty status for 5 years and work a desk job when he should have been working in the field in support of the unit. That's just one of many examples that I tracked with documentation. The level of incompetence with management within the unit made for a bad environment. This was all in place long before my arrival, which is simply never exposed. I cannot let myself be the scapegoat for covering the exposure of wrongdoing, mismanagement of funds, spoiled food served to many, large amounts of wasted food and funds, especially when each speech by the sheriff leans into the defunding of our department, all while knowing the lack of real oversight and reconciliation with budgeting, evasiveness with bringing up the topic of true needs within the unit, and lies. I can't just hope it will all just go away. Not when my name is attached to a $30 million budget that was used as a tool to play on the sympathies of the Board of Supervisors. Unfortunately, the media won't do it justice. They choose what you hear, read, and see. But I have what my chief deemed as enough documentation to be fine going through this administrative investigation. She was supportive, at least on the days we had met prior to all of this. As things unfolded and during our conversations, she still was. Sadly, it was not enough for not moving forward as the person who signs the paperwork to open an internal affairs case in the first place. After speaking with her, it was clear that it was a decision that was not her own, but came from above her, an echo from over 17 years ago, and also eerily similar to what we are all witnessing unfold with the recent headlines. It is interesting that the same theme continues and repeats, like a deck full of only Joker cards. Alex holds information and uses it to harm, lie on, and mistreat others. Hey, he held information about a force incident from 2004 and used it in 2005 to try to place me and my then partner, now husband, Eric Strong, under investigation. It backfired, and he was furious. He had already gone after us prior to that lie, with it backfiring each time. His own lawsuit put it into perspective for me. Oh, the irony of him suing for discrimination compared to his own views and actions bared for all to see today. I guess it is no longer about discrimination, but now making up a difference he believes needs to be made, and retribution for his own actions, netting him being transferred, receiving discipline, and me being the deputy of the 2 he went after who testified against him over a violation of the policy of equality. Eric and I are the 2 deputies. Alex had over 17 years ago made statements in his own lawsuit against the department about a white male being placed in the operations sergeant position instead of him. Alex had only been a sergeant for 4 months prior to him wanting this position, yet he felt he should have been selected. That's on page 4, line 27 in his lawsuit. In December of 2003, he again applied for this position, and this time he was rejected by the captain, who he said selected instead a lesser qualified African-American female. In reading this, I wondered, so what was wrong with the white male? He hadn't mentioned him being lesser qualified, so what was the problem? Oh, I get it. He just wasn't Latino, and she was black. Also, it was not Alex's way, so it had to be wrong. Much like all this craziness unfolding today about the deputy gangs, his statements about black people in an interview with Gustavo Arellano of the LA Times. Where I found Mr. Arellano's statement surprising was when he said, a noxious strain latently within Latinos. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty close. Interestingly enough, I asked a Latino friend of mine, and he said he knew this to be true as well. I applaud the honesty. Actually didn't deter friendship with him. It's really not the thoughts, but the actions that are disgusting when people look down on others. I would never know your real thoughts anyway, right? But so many show their real colors, especially in social media. His removal as head of emergency operations by the Board of Supervisors, which might very well be his favorite 3 words, as that is all I hear him say. They are even responsible for him running out of household necessities like toilet paper, I believe. Being placed on a budgeting plan, which makes sense considering the first-hand knowledge of mismanagement of overtime just in my unit alone. A use of force incident in March of 2021 that is being discussed and defended now in May of 2022. That's a year, right? Also familiar to my own dealings with him back then. Whistleblowers coming forward to say he is lying. Man, is this familiar? Both from being a whistleblower and, on many occasions, sadly enough, with Alex's lies. He had all those years ago deemed himself aggrieved because of his race, and then turned around and used that same model to go after Eric and I. Hey, black on black crime is the problem. But what about the bad shootings and ugly headlines? Shouldn't he be focused there first? Shiny ball, look over here. Let's just deflect. More like lesser qualified as a people overall in his mind. If we aren't careful, we become much like that which we despise. In his case, he targets those different from him, like he claimed was happening to him in the early 2000s. You would think he would not want anyone to experience what he had, but not. He actually wants revenge.
He brought up one of the most noxious strains that Latinos have latently in us, which is an anti-blackness. That is absolutely true. In that sense, he does exemplify one of the worst traits that Latinos have.
Tell us about a time when someone from the sheriff's department harmed you.
It was early 2004, and I was working at the Lenox Youth Activity League. We called it the YAL. I walked into the copy room nearing the close of my day and made copies of paperwork for whatever it was I was working on at the moment. I would later learn that additional paperwork had been left on the machine, and I had scooped it all up and placed it in an envelope, preparing to leave for home. The paperwork included a memo authored by Alex Villanueva to Captain Richard Adams. In the memo, Alex explained what he saw as Eric Strong, my then partner, and I being problem employees. He slandered my name with false accusations and even tried to have one or both of us transferred based solely on maybe a 2-month observation of our work. He had become our supervisor following a former partner of his, Myron Johnson, who had been removed from the position due to not taking responsibility for his own work. This work was a grant for the YAL through the Community Development Block Grant program. I had been left to complete and track this grant, in addition to my own work, when the prior sergeant transferred out. Johnson made it plain that I was to complete the reporting and send it to him for signature and submission. When I refused and continued to send the report, it angered him, yet he never took over the responsibility. Johnson had only been interested in working out, studying for the lieutenant's exam, and licking his wounds from being transferred back to Lenox Station from the Special Enforcement Bureau, where he had been given an opportunity to prove his worth there and failed. Instead of going back to the station, he had been sent to the YAL to help things not look so bad for him. In a meeting with the captain, he said that a year at the YAL was probably a good amount of time to now return back to the station. Even with him not doing his job at the youth center, the captain was still willing to work with him. Alex then came with a similar mindset to have me continue the same work without taking responsibility either. This had been the responsibility of the sergeant prior to both Johnson and Villanueva.
I just want to see people do their job. It's as simple as that.
I reported the information found on the copier as slanderous to my name and would also become privy to an email exchange between the operations lieutenant, Lieutenant Richard Dinsmore, on behalf of the captain and Alex. This lieutenant explained to Alex the need to supervise and questioned the many accusations within the memo. Alex would return in obvious feelings of being insulted himself and even mention something about race being an issue. Based on your comments alluding to the invaluable service you believe they provided to the Lenox community, I harbor no illusions being of a different race than these two if I push the issue and counsel and document their activities on an individual basis. Once checked by Dinsmore in the email, he went on to negate his own bulleted points by stating he had confirmed we were where we said we were and that we had been giving him the information and he'd been debriefed by Eric on the other concerns. He spoke about an assigned project he had given with the breaking apart of Eric and I as partners, but failed to include that it was stacked on top of the grant work he had me doing in his place. It was a frivolous PowerPoint presentation about how to improve the Lenox YAL. I think Eric and I, just the two of us, adding 9 programs to a 3-program YAL when we arrived, constitutes that we already have proven how to improve the YAL. His examples for why we were problematic also including that I had sent an email to my peers with a suggestion for a movie night program for the kids and should have gotten his blessing for the program that didn't exist and that I was only suggesting. I blame the Board of Supervisors. He had actually presented Eric and I with performance log entries, written documentation of supervisory observations, but in this case negative, stating that we failed to complete a busy work assignment that he gave us. Here he was trying to paint us two in a bad light, and he only wanted to rehash how he had been done so wrong by his superiors, and he only continued to perfect his mission to do absolutely nothing. The memo and his statements didn't work, as there had been nothing to report of any level of substance. This all took place between February, his arrival to the assignment, and May. The time in between May and the next hit was strained. And I even remember him being upset that I was not sending him the CDBG grant information via email to then print and sign and send as if it were his own work. And he who is now in charge of the largest sheriff's department in the world. Wow. In all this, Alex nor Johnson bothered to actually be involved at the youth center, get to know Eric and I, nor did they lend support of the work to make a difference. If Alex saw us as so problematic, where was his almighty mentorship to correct the issues? No different from his denial about problems within the department and inability to own it so that we can move forward as a department in a better way. His own words stating 50 years of failed leadership is what he said in one of his many videos. Well, guess what? He just added 3+ years to that 50 of failed leadership. In June of that same year, Eric and I had a force incident following a woman having her purse stolen and us chasing the two suspects, one complying and the other struggling while being cuffed, and us using force to get her handcuffed. Johnson, who had been returned to the line on patrol, you remember him, he was our previous sergeant, responded to our location and we reported the force to him. In addition to this, the family of the suspect we had used force on, they were livid, and we had directed them to the station to file a complaint because Johnson left. They had every right to do so. Johnson had told us that there was no force, even though we had explained the struggle while handcuffing her. In my mind, it was sheer laziness to not want to take the force as reported. I had never feared writing and saw it as simply to document the incident rather than blow it off as a big nothing. Eric and I documented the incident anyway, and I placed our reporting in an envelope and into Johnson's mailbox at the station. We also sent brief summaries about what happened via email, as we did not trust that he would carry through with reporting the information from his level. After all, he said that there was no force at an incident he wasn't at during the time it happened. Alex would use this almost a year later when he would again author a memo and claim we had failed to report a force incident. Sound familiar? Fast forward to July, and Eric and I were sent to take 4 of the youth from the center on a police activity league trip to Florida. It was a leadership conference and for awards. We arrived in Orlando for the conference, and Alex had called ahead and canceled the trip, leaving us with 4 young people and no registration or place to stay for the conference. He had vindictively placed young people in a bad situation to further attempt turning his screw. It hadn't worked the first time with the memo left on the copier. Lieutenant Dinsmore, who had also laid out for Alex the concerns the captain had with his memo and the contrast to the captain's observations of Eric and my work, contacted the National PAL director and had us reinstated to the conference, and he arranged hotel accommodations for us all. This action, and possibly the other actions I would learn about later, caused him to be transferred to Carson Station immediately, and he was no longer our supervisor upon our return from that weekend conference. I'm sure that angered him. It would be a year later when Eric and I would meet our new sergeant, John Roberts, and be told that we were being placed under investigation for failure to report a force incident. A force incident from a year prior. Doesn't this sound familiar, considering the current incident sparking multiple whistleblowers coming forward about a force with an inmate in March of 2021? Fortunately, at the time, we had the emails we sent to document the incident, as we had not trusted Johnson to do the right thing, nor Villanueva. The proof of a read receipt with Alexandro Villanueva having read the email the next morning following the incident would save us from investigation and would serve as yet another negative incident with Alex. Wondering what he thinks of me? It is said that he waited for the deputy kneeling on the inmate. That video. Waited a whole year. What is the discipline for 2 sergeants not doing their part to report force once reported to them? After, say, by my calculation, 18 years. Did that incident actually ever get reported? I can remember at some point during my time as a drill instructor at the academy when I was told that Alex would be possibly transferring to the recruit training unit where I was assigned. I remember speaking to my operations staff about transferring out, as I did not want to have Alex take yet another shot at me. I would never and still don't understand why he holds the anger from his own actions and inactions. But it all makes sense as I observe him today. Never taking any responsibility for anything, and everything being everyone else's fault. Primarily, hold on, wait for it. You guessed it, the Board of Supervisors. Oh, maybe I should be blaming them for being placed under investigation. Not.
93% of the time, the allegation, the complaint is absolutely false.
Fast forward, and in November of 2019, without warning, Eric received word that he was being transferred out as the unit commander for the Audit and Accountability Bureau. He had done nothing wrong, but was being replaced. I remember him being told he would be reassigned to Industry Station, and him advocating for himself by saying that if he hadn't done anything wrong, why would he be subjected to a backward move back to a watch commander assignment at a station? Something he had already done in the past at other locations. He was then assigned to Court Services Division, still a less prestigious position somewhat from that of unit commander, but not as hard of a blow. This was probably because of several reasons. Obviously, another dig from Alex. And also, the Audit and Accountability Bureau is linked almost directly to the Office of the Sheriff. Eric is too honest to play games, and Alex already had it in his mind that he didn't want this employee to prosper. This employee who he had lied on in the past, with all of it backfiring. Maybe it was fear of having someone actually tell the emperor that he was nude, a risk he was not willing to take.
So I'm the bad guy because I'm pointing out the obvious. The emperor has no clothes.
I simply remained diligent with my own work and was glad to be out of the limelight of anything but positive successes at my unit. The opening of a cafe, transitioning to better food for the inmates, which actually proved productive with the reduction of gassings during the initial pilot program at MCJ. Applying for and receiving a new job title and position, which allowed people who couldn't promote from the entry-level positions to now promote. The assistant cook position. Implementation of an 80-hour training for all the line level and up supervisors. Promotion of staff members within the unit 71 times and hiring over 60 new people to the unit. Also navigating the unexpected and unknown with the COVID-19 pandemic. With what I call the alphabet plan. Having success with step-by-step actions of staying slightly ahead of what was coming, even though it was unknown. Little did I know what was actually coming. I should have known it would not stop with just Eric being transferred. And Alex, now in charge at the very top, had a huge axe to grind. Had I wanted to, I could have brought all this out during his campaign. I had decided that it was all reported as it should have been back then, and to just see what happened. Very wrong thinking on my part, considering that there were several attempts. I am currently under investigation. For what? I'm still a little confused. And after being interviewed, I'm even more confused now.
It is difficult for those who are in power. I was laughed at, ridiculed, and ignored, and then retaliated against.
Alex would even go as far as to fabricate a story about Eric on national television during a candidate forum with CBS and KCAL 9. It was following Pat Harvey asking Eric about his wife being a whistleblower and asking him to explain about our past with Alex. It was interesting that Alex never said anything about me, but instantly lied about a school shooting that Eric refused to respond to. A flat-out lie. Eric calmly let it be known that it was just that. Another lie, others not knowing the connection between he and Alex.
Eric Strong, you served as a lieutenant for the last 11 years in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. You have a personal story that I'd like to hear you talk about, and this has to do with your wife in terms of her being a whistleblower and what Sheriff Villanueva's response was to that. I want you to speak to that and also say why you think that you could lead this department better than the sheriff.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. You know, yes, we do have a personal relationship, or I should say a personal history with Alex Villanueva. It goes back many, many years. Most recently, he did put her under investigation and transfer her from her unit commander position assignment, because basically what she did was she told the truth. She reported several failures within her own command. She reported her own commander for being absentee and not taking care of the things that were being reported up the chain, which led to about 3,000 inmates being served moldy bread over a course of 2 days. And when she reported that, she ended up being the one put under investigation. But it has to be said that about 17 or 18 years ago, Alex tried to do the same thing to us by trying to target us, both she and I, and putting forth efforts to smear our reputation, even to the point where he lied in documentation. And I think it actually backfired on him, and he actually got in some trouble. So, you know, with that, the reason I think I'm the best one to do this is because I'm not surprised. You know, I know who he is. I know who his character is, and anything and everything we're seeing is not surprising. You know, we do not have to have deputy gangs, jail abuses, and cover-ups as our headlines, but we do, and that's because of the leadership. It's because of the failed leadership. You know, I am somebody that brings a 360-degree perspective. I have experienced many of the negative contacts with law enforcement that many of our communities are crying out about. But I'm also in law enforcement, and I've been doing it for 30 years, and I have run the gamut of neighborhoods that I've worked and assignments that I've worked, and I know that we can do it better. We can do it better because we've been trying to arrest our way out of our crises. It's not working, and we need to look at different solutions. So I'm here to bring that to the table.
All right. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Strong. You know, I think at this point, we're going to stay in this round just for a moment longer. Sheriff, I want to give you a chance to respond, because those are all serious allegations that each candidate has laid upon you, allegations of corruption, of lack of a moral compass. How do you respond to these charges?
I don't not testify falsely. Everything I testify is truthfully, but actually, Mr. Strong, when there was a deputy involved shooting and the entire elementary school next to the Lenox YL, they all screamed as an assailant with an AK-47 was firing at deputies. The school with hundreds of kids running, terrorized, away from it. And all of us at the YL had to throw in our gear to go out there and save the kids and find out who was responsible. His famous words to me was, "That's not my job." And he refused a role to a shooting right in front of the YAL. So, you know, Mr. Strong has had his chance, but he's failed miserably.
Lieutenant Strong, let's have you respond to what the sheriff just said. He said that during a deputy-involved shooting, you said, quote, "That's not my job." Do you recall the incident, and is there any truth to that allegation?
Ross, that is an absolute lie, and I'm not surprised. Alex has lied. I have memos, I have emails that have documented his lies. You know, he came into the youth center and wanted to take grant money for kids and buy vests and put it towards patrol functions. Never happened. As a matter of fact, in my career, I've ran towards gunfire way more than he's probably ever experienced. So I have no idea what he's talking about. I would love to see some proof that I was there. As a matter of fact, after he was moved from Lenox Station because of his vindictiveness towards me, he tried to retaliate even a year later, alleging that I failed to use force. I failed to report force. However, I had proof of that, and he ended up getting in trouble again. So, unlike what Robert said, you know, I don't think it's his rank, his lieutenantness that causes him to be a failure. It's his lack of integrity. It's his lack of character. It's not the rank, it's the person, and he's demonstrating that over and over again, day after day.
In December of 2018, Alex Villanueva became the sheriff of Los Angeles County, and things took a drastic turn. I would not know that I would be subjected to a rapid turnover of supervisors, ending with one so grateful for her promotion that I'm sure she was willing to carry whatever message was needed and whatever she was given as the assignment as my executive level supervisor. She had to have an assignment, maybe even a script, because it definitely wasn't to actually supervise. COVID-19 had hit while I was under the supervision of the previous supervisor, thankfully, as he allowed me the autonomy to stretch and grow even more in my position without hovering and nitpicking during a year of much growth to juggle so much responsibility. I'm so proud of that work. With continued limited staffing, he said he saw nothing broken and had no intentions of disrupting good progress within the unit. Instead of the great changes being made, it was met with much pushback from the FSU staff. They couldn't appreciate it. While juggling all this, I would not know I would be getting yet another supervisor. Enter Josie Willem, who would change the trajectory of all I knew at FSU. With no support, selfish ambition, and her own personal life matters, all driving her sudden disdain for me. I guess the need to promote and rise into the non-testable selection process of cronyism, favoritism, and nepotism was stronger than integrity and truth, for her at least. The tool used to fabricate all this was an incompetent subordinate in Turner, who not only struggled in his position, but suffered from what I believe was an identity crisis. Being a Black man, he made racial statements about me and comparisons with how he had handled a situation with his mother. I never understood. There were also the comments shared by a friend of his who also works at FSU about why he had married the way he had, choosing a white woman to marry because he just couldn't deal with Black women. His anger at being exposed as incompetent would be the perfect soil in which to plant the foundational lies that led to my placement under investigation. And Willem was all too happy to jump aboard. You see, LASD has no testing for the positions of captain, commander, chief, assistant sheriff, and undersheriff. You are simply placed in those positions depending on the sheriff's say or that of his designee. There has been talk of his designee being his wife, who has had her share of negative limelight in the media as well. So there's a breeding ground for nepotism, cronyism, favoritism, and any other ism you could think of. Some would call it being in the car with whoever was deemed in charge. Sure, it netted promotion, but at what cost? Some of these selections were also not necessarily the best and brightest. So I'm sure that it made it even easier for having them carry whatever mission message was desired. It was simply too much work for Willem to actually support me in this process and do her job. She had her promotion and could have cared less about what happened to my career. I will forever wonder if trying to paint me in a dark light somehow made her feel better about herself. Lord knows it was not because of all my work, which she could never dispute. But being protected from close friends in high places has its privileges. Let me take you through the timeline. The timeline tracking I became used to is ironically similar to that of many years ago with the current sheriff. I learned early on in my career that my word would be challenged, and there was always this skepticism from me merely walking into a room. No objective thought, just whatever feelings about whoever I am to whoever was looking. I wonder why that was. That skepticism could not overshadow my intellect and ability, though, and most who were really paying attention could attest to the same. Let's just begin later in my timeline, in August of 2021, as this was a month with so many things happening, and also the month the investigation I had been placed under was backdated to. August 23rd. my husband announced that he was running for the position of sheriff of Los Angeles County. This was the official announcement, but he had been setting things in place and people were curious months prior. There had been an unintentional Facebook post with this information included, and word travels fast within LASD. Some people began to reach out to me and ask me about hearing that he was possibly running. He had also spoken with 2 of the candidates about his plan. Cecil Rambo, who he called because he heard Rambo might be running, to which Eric was told no. Eric asked that he let him know if he changed his mind about running, to which Cecil agreed. I remember Eric laughing, and he told Cecil something to the effect that he was just calling as a courtesy and only wanted to know who he would beat in the race. It was healthy banter at the time. Later, it would be jabs at Eric in candidate forums that were unwarranted and underhanded. Cecil then announced that he would be running, going all in on Villanueva. Eric also had a discussion with Eli Vera, who had been the first to announce his candidacy. Vera had a conversation with Eric, and I can remember chuckling at Eric sharing that Eli was sure he would be promoted to the rank of assistant sheriff. After all, it wasn't something that was to be worked for. Remember, there's no test for it. It's a gift. When Assistant Sheriff Bruce Chase of the custody side of the operation was moved into the position that Eli thought he would get, Vera wasn't promoted, and he announced his candidacy shortly thereafter. Up to that point, he had been all in for the ride with the current sheriff, even being graced, like many others, with games of promotional leapfrog, bypassing commander to his chief position. The titles would be the focus with the campaign, and even on some occasions proved that some really didn't know the inner workings of the promotional process within the LASD at all. Society as a whole seems title-struck and rarely looks under the hood when buying that car. Then the confusion sets in when that car doesn't start. Actually, we should just blame the Board of Supervisors for everything, according to Alex. Anyway, August 30th, 2021, I sent the information requesting an investigation into the lack of performance to departmental standards for Turner. I had been unable to garner the support of advocacy, employee relations, or Woolham with the unit performance mentoring. I had discussed this with her and discussed placing him in this program. She had initially agreed, and then the tide turned and she started backpedaling, contacting advocacy the same day I did to inquire about their process. I guess she planned to use them for information to appear as if she knew what she was doing, much like she had been doing with me, with calling me to be ready for explanations to the chief, sometimes minutes before her chief's meeting. September 1st, 2021. Hearing nothing from her about what I had sent about Turner and having it confirmed for me that she had called advocacy herself this same day, I knew something was coming. I sent a request to meet with Woolham and listed the reasons in the email for the meeting request, this time listing the challenges I had with her own actions or inactions as my supervisor. I was given September 27th as the day to meet, albeit being one of only 2 people she supervised. And she was absent with me most of the time, so how hard was it to address this concern? I'm sure the information in the email was not welcoming, but it was needed to be addressed. No support for Turner, you're not supporting me, both of you are on either side of my position. Where was I to go? My hands were tied with an incompetent lead manager and her not supporting me at all, but becoming increasingly more nitpicking with added busy work, anonymous complaints. The pandemic had everyone delayed with everything, but somehow Cedra had failed the department miserably, and she didn't stop to consider how much she was failing Cedra.
When truth speaks to power, it is difficult for those who are in power.
September 14th, 2021. I met with Chief Margarita Velasquez, Woolham's supervisor, to discuss concerns with Woolham and the Turner issue. both causing undue workload for me and constant scrutiny. Chief Velasquez expressed with her own concern regarding Woolham's work ethic, absenteeism, and the questioning of her level of competence as a commander. Imagine my surprise. I remember her saying Woolham had limited experience with investigations, yet she had been captain of Internal Affairs Bureau and scrutinized any case I put before her, even reopening one that was closed. And that Woolham should not have been checking my timesheets so hard when she was absentee herself quite a bit. From her clicking around in high heels to being a drama queen, the chief was spot on in her assessment of Woolham. Although not specifically confirming my suspicions, all based only on talk I had heard around the department, the chief did speak to the close relationship between Woolham and the chief's own executive supervisor, Assistant Sheriff Brendan Corbett. Even to the point, according to the Velasquez statements, that she had been sent by Corbett to cover for Woolham at a meeting because Woolham had a hair appointment and was still there. This was familiar to me, as Woolham had once told me about her having some facial procedure done and would be at work but not in the office, so I was to call her on her cell phone if I needed anything. It all started to make sense to me with Woolham's behavior. If she was close to the assistant sheriff, she felt empowered. But it also dawned on me that this could be coming from someone else, even above Corbett, who was close to the top of the organization. I barely knew Corbett and had never worked with him. Velasquez offered to have a meeting with both Woolham and I, but wanted to be sure I was ready to be very forthright with Woolham, as she had met with Woolham and another captain that Woolham supervised and shared that the anger expressed when this was requested by the captain was cooled and not as outright once the meeting took place. I assured her that I had more documentation than I could ever go over in one meeting, but had no problem being direct. But I asked that we first wait until the meeting I had on calendar with Woolham for the 27th of September. As an adult, I've never shied away from confrontation, while remaining professional and direct at the same time. I had a meeting set and would see what Woolham had to say. She already had the list of the things I wanted to speak about, none really good. I left the meeting with the chief and even sent her an email with even more documentation about my concerns. On September 15th of 2021, my field sergeant brought the molded bread to my office and laid out the discovery and that it had been served for 2 days, the day prior and the day she brought it to my office in the morning. Turner came to the office and admitted he knew about it the Monday prior. With all the other mistakes, challenges with his work, neglectful mishaps under his watch, I simply began to package and request an investigation because of his own spontaneous statements. He was once again deflecting and started blaming others for his lack of taking full responsibility and working to find out what happened leading to the bread incident. In many ways, he was used to me cleaning up his messes and was content making a huge salary and being paid to be lazy and make excuses. Even taking someone else's work and claiming it as his own at one point in my tenure there. September 23rd, 2021, I had a packet hand-delivered to the office of the chief with a full request for an investigation into the moldy bread incident. I had been awaiting loss in dollar amount and other information about the labels and expiration dates, along with the inventory sheets, which showed the signature of the senior food manager, Gregory Hawkins, having signed off that all was good with the food. He was also said to have ordered eggs, over-ordering them, and told the staff to serve the eggs instead, leaving the meals we had purchased to offset the lack of and continued loss of staffing to become molded. These meals being ordered as a way to maintain food for inmates, and he was willing to let them sit rather than risk exposure of his own mistake, conveniently being absent when this all unfolded. Absent like my same field sergeant who brought the bread to my attention said of him in the kitchens anyway. She said she would start monitoring this as the staff had been complaining they didn't see him working in the kitchen. Yet another management level supervisor who worked little and expected much. October 4th, 2021. I spoke over the phone with the chief about my investigation into the molded bread request after she reached out to me. I remember being at the doctor's office. She wanted more information about the dollar loss amount and had other questions. It was during this time that I told her I would want to meet, as she had suggested earlier, with both she and Woolham. After the delays with the meeting, placing it from September 27th to the 28th, and it now being planned for October 5th with Woolham, which was the next day. I had requested the meeting, but she moved and delayed it a couple times. Add to this her lack of support in holding Turner accountable. I had nowhere else to go with all this. Woolham was not going to support me, was constantly absentee, and it was all going nowhere. Velasquez said she would get back to me with a date real soon. I had my secretary cancel the meeting with Woolham. After all, I had requested the meeting in the first place. I took it off the table. October 5th of 2021, the next day after speaking with the chief. About 3 weeks after I submitted the paperwork, I received a call from the chief's secretary with a request for me to meet with the chief. I went to the chief's office and while waiting saw Woolham go back and forth between the chief's office and another office which was a few doors down. Suddenly, Woolham asked me to accompany her to the other office, and I followed her into the office where another commander, Jason Woollock, was already sitting. She seemed irritated, as always, and sat down behind the desk facing me and Woollock. She said I was being placed under investigation and transferred from my assignment at FSU to the Access to Care unit. She was emphatic about me not returning to my office and being paid for the rest of the week to remain at home on administrative leave. When I asked her why I was being placed under investigation, and after fumbling with the reasons, she first listed policy violations and then added something else. When I asked her to repeat it all so that I could make note of it, she said it would all be it'll be in the paperwork, Cedra. I then asked about the meeting with the chief, the reason I had been given to report in the first place, and she said she didn't know anything about that. I simply informed her that I would still be speaking with the chief, and I left the office. I went to the chief's secretary, who I am now convinced was in on the Woolham stunt to get me there, as she had said I was to meet with the chief. I entered the office of the chief right behind the secretary. The chief's aide was sitting at the table. She asked the two women to leave. She explained to me that she didn't want me to be upset and how I documented things better than anyone she had seen. She said that she knew I would be fine in all this, given all that I had already shared with her, even giving me a hug before leaving the office. It didn't quite make sense, as she had to be the one to approve the investigation at the chief's level. Or was it not her own doing? If she had said I would be fine in all this, based on what she already knew, why was it being placed under investigation in the first place? I had suspicions that this was coming from above her and asked her the same straight out. She did not deny, nor did she confirm my suspicions, but repeated about my documentation skills and intelligence. I nodded in understanding that I was pretty much right in my thinking, and I left. I knew then that this was coming from not just directly above her, but higher. There were only 3 other people that are higher than her. Assistant Sheriff Brendan Corbett, who had always been at minimum cordial. We never worked together. I don't know him, although I had heard some not so good things about him. Under Sheriff Timothy Murakami, who I had worked with at Temple Station and who had praised my work back then. I had never had any problems with him. And Alex, who I had a history with from 17 years ago. Fast forward to today and all that is unfolding. Does life imitate art or vice versa? I don't know, there's a saying. This all seems strangely echo-ish and familiar. October 26th, 3 weeks later, I received the paperwork Woolham referenced almost a month earlier in her rush of an investigation and transfer. All of this coming out of the blue and making more and more sense as I thought back to my meetings and conversations with the chief. I noted the missing signature above the chief's signature block, and this had been presented by the operations staff of my new assignment, not from Woolham. All strange. During that same week, October 26, I was asked to clear my office. I had planned Disneyland and hanging out with my family for the Halloween weekend and told my new assignment staff I would clear the office by no later than the following weekend, the weekend of November 6th or 7th. On November 7th, I arrived at my office to pick up my things. I noticed that my things normally on my desk were now stacked on the ledge on the long cabinet by the window. I then saw one of my folders among what looked like someone else's things. I realized that they could not even wait until I had cleared my things before the new lieutenant had moved in. No real big problem with that. Except for when I gathered all of my things from the cabinet, shelves, armoire, and desk drawers, I couldn't find 2 red books and my blue journal. Someone had to be looking pretty hard to find these things, as they were in separate places, one being in the very back of my lower right drawer. I reported this to Chief Velasquez right away as well, and she said she would look into it. To date, I've yet to hear the final outcome of this or other inquiries made about the clearing of my office items.
Are you worried that, so the RAM report went into the fact that a lot of your deputies don't feel comfortable coming forward reporting these instances of harassment and assault by their deputies? Are you worried about that? That like within your department there's people who don't feel that they can come forward?
Well, there's going to be a small group that doesn't feel in any organization. I don't think, because one thing is, for example, any organizational setting where you're going to go to a supervisor to complain about another employee is fraught with the concerns, because your working environment, you're going to create distrust, animosity. It's true in any profession, any organization. And our Whistleblower Protection Act and the Whistleblower Act itself, we're going to definitely defend people. And we're a large enough organization, we can accommodate transferring people who want to work in a different environment and away from the problem. We can do that. But ultimately, we have to protect the people who come forward to complain about it. We have an obligation as an employer to react to information, actionable knowledge. But we can't be held accountable for what we do not know. And that's the bottom line.
I watched a video about Sheriff Villanueva's campaign. And it got me to thinking, when I filed a claim with the county, the first stages for my lawsuit, I had immediate reactions and comments about the whistleblower information. Some thought this was done in support of my husband's campaign. I heard everything from one person being ashamed of me, sending me a text message, to why did she wait so long? The timing is rather convenient, and other comments. I chuckled when I read these things, as I would have to agree.
To investigate the investigation. That's corruption. That's actually obstruction of justice right there.
Right knee on the inmate's head for more than 3 minutes as they handcuff him.
It was my belief, too, that this was because of the campaign, only it was the opposite of what they were thinking. And assuming, and you know what happens when you break that word down, it was because Eric was running for sheriff that I reignited the wrath from 17 years ago of Alex Villanueva. Why had I waited till now to do that, 3 years into his term? It is an interesting dynamic to have a career come to a lull because of one person's extreme incompetence, another person's willingness to do anything for a promotion, and bitterness from a lie told many years ago. Ironically, like the exposure of what we just witnessed about the deputy kneeling on the inmate's head, Alex seems to have a pattern of holding information and then trying to use it to either cover his own haphazard tracks or somehow use it in a gotcha moment. Alex gave a timeline and even a picture show. He spoke about how horrible the people were that didn't handle the situation properly. Even saw on social media a quote about what people do when they're leaders, using a long white pointer pointing to his own web of lies. It's alleged it's a concocted story about those below him not doing what they should have, and others willing to help him in the bitter end. For anyone who knew about this and did nothing. Wow. By the standards of those with automatic opinions of my whistleblowing, you're a hero to keep the big LASD secret and cards close to your chest. Support to the death, right or wrong. It is the blue line. I believe the right over the wrong. I watched in horror as Alex highlighted one of the candidates in the campaign where he thought he was hurting this person. It may have been the gift of a platform through free media coverage. This candidate, having ridden the coattails of Alex for almost 3 years, and when the promotion he just knew he had coming didn't happen, announced his candidacy just over a week later. We were all stupid enough to not think of this little tidbit and other information about lawsuits for him. A promotional jump and lawsuits for this same individual, all while claiming to have worked up through the ranks. I could be wrong, but hey, didn't he miss one? And let's not forget that he was on the board of the Truth and Reconciliation panel writing a memo in support of bringing back Karen Mandoyan to the tune of what was it? I think I read or heard in one of the videos, $3 million. I can't prove that, of course, but that's what was mentioned. In the memo, he highlighted that he was tapping with a broomstick on the window to get his things because he was locked out. At least that was the statements, I guess, from Mandoyan.
LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva is having to answer some tough questions about a sheriff's deputy fired for domestic violence and stalking allegations who Villanueva reinstated. Eyewitness News has obtained exclusive video of the incident in which it appears the deputy tries to break into his ex-girlfriend's home, resulting in a struggle and also some veiled threats over the phone. It calls into question the sheriff's decision to rehire that deputy. The woman who accused Sheriff's Deputy Karen Carl Mandoyan of domestic violence used this video to make her case for a temporary restraining order. In September of 2014, he's seen on video allegedly trying to break into her window.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Later, he's in her home. While she hides in the bathroom in the dark, he tries to talk to her, and she tells him to leave.
Karen, leave. I don't. You're doing something stupid. I'm not dealing with you. Goodbye.
Then this.
Get out of my house. Get out, Karen. Get out. Get out. Stop, dude. Get out of my house. I'm calling the cops.
Deputy Karen Carl Mandoyan was a 10-year veteran of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Former Sheriff Jim McDonald fired Mandoyan after the domestic violence and stalking allegations surfaced. New Sheriff Alex Villanueva reinstated Mandoyan, who had served as his volunteer driver and aide during Villanueva's campaign. Villanueva has been sharply criticized by county supervisors for rehiring the former deputy, a decision he defended today.
There was no evidence of domestic violence. There was no evidence of attempt burglary.
The woman who says Mandoyan was her ex-boyfriend says he once grabbed her by the back of the neck and pushed her face down into a couch. She recorded conversations in which you can hear a police radio in the background, conversations containing veiled threats.
You deserve what you got coming.
Which is what?
Just watch. And I'm gonna sit back and laugh.
Okay.
The woman got a temporary restraining order against Mandoyan. Prosecutors declined to file charges against the deputy, citing a lack of sufficient evidence. We put in a call to Mandoyan's attorney to see if there would be any response to today's developments. So far, we are told there will be no response.
I understand that you are a candidate for Sheriff of Los Angeles County. Do I have that correct?
I am, sir.
And once you announced your candidacy for sheriff, did you or your family face any retaliation?
Unfortunately, I did.
And what What position did you hold on the day that you announced that you were a candidate?
I was a division chief.
And did that position change?
It did.
What happened to change that position?
I was eventually demoted to the rank of commander.
And what was the explanation that was offered, if any?
The explanation was that I was running for sheriff.
Come ballot time, people need to remember that.
It led me to thinking about what I had been listening to and witnessing during this entire campaign process, because that's why I was doing all this that led me to be placed under investigation. So of course I would think that way. One candidate emphatically stating that he would be sure to not have a promotional process that's just window dressing, but one based on merit, not one based on sex or minorities, one that includes white people as well. All while appearing angry on stage during the LASD Union Candidate Forum and sounding different later on other forums with all of his caring about the community. Seeing as the percentage of white officers across the nation is in the 70th percentile, I don't blame him for working to right this horrible wrong. But wait a minute, maybe I should blame the board. No, never mind. He then said that we need to just be realistic, that the crimes in the lower economic neighborhoods are primarily from Black and brown people, in a heated response during the Knock LA Candidate Forum. This forum was unlike the forums with the same seemingly scripted questions about mental illness, homelessness, and the rise in crime. This candidate seems angry at every forum and was once close friends with Alex, both being drill instructors at that time. It had been mentioned to me by several people long ago that he had been none too kind to primarily the Black recruits in the academy. I heard this well before all this was happening with the campaign. Angrily choosing to speak to politics in the middle of the forum with the police unions in what should have been a nonpartisan forum, appealing to the majority of those in the audience, maybe assuming they all simply think the same, which is sometimes the worst way to think because you just don't know. Assumptions are never good.
We'll create a promotional process that's based on merit, not one that's based on window dressing or sex or minorities, one that's based on meritocracy, qualifications, experience, and ability, okay? One that includes Caucasians as well, okay? That's what I plan to do to this department, to fix it and get everyone on the same page moving forward. Sheriff Villanueva never got to those 300 deputies. They're sitting at home fired because he blew all of his political capital on one deputy who had harassed his girlfriend on television for domestic violence. He used to be a Democrat, progressive Democrat, put in office by anti-Trump rhetoric.
You know, Cerise, I'm going to challenge your question. You know, carrying a challenge coin is fine. Wearing something unauthorized.
Just yes or no, please, Matt. Just yes or no, please.
Cerise, with all due respect, if the question's invalid, I'm going to check you on it. It's an invalid question. You can carry a challenge coin in your pocket,
okay,
but you don't have to. You do not.
Just to stay in time with our forum rules, it's a yes or no answer only. Thank you, but I appreciate the thought.
It's invalid.
Next question.
Let's be realistic here. When you take a look at who is in the county jail, the vast majority of the people in the county jail are African American and Latinos. Most of the violent crime that is occurring in our communities, unfortunately, is happening in the Latino communities and in the African American communities. And that is exactly where our deputies are making stops. Now, if they're invalid stops or illegal stops or unethical stops, that's unacceptable. However, we have to be realistic about what's going on in our communities, and that's why my platform started in the African American communities, so we and in the Latino communities, so we could break these cycles of violence that's occurring in the communities of color.
This is definitely alarming. You know, I'm a Black man that lives in a Black and brown community, and I've been subjected to these traffic stops. And one thing I know in my 30 years of experience, having done thousands of stops, is you can pull up to somebody ask for their driver's license and registration, walk back and write a ticket. You know, legislation says that traffic stops are inherently dangerous. If it's the traffic stop that's inherently dangerous, then we should do the exact same things that we do in Compton, that we do in Malibu, Lomita, or Cerritos. But data is showing, and as the unit commander of Audit and Accountability Bureau, we did audits, and these tens and tens of thousands of stops, we're not finding a whole lot of stuff on these things. We're just creating numbers. And as one of the candidates said, if we want to fool ourselves, and if we want to fool ourselves that this is not a problem, that is not occurring, then we're going to keep having the same problems that we've been having all along. The reality of it is this. I have the ability to diffuse it. Many people don't. I get pulled over and asked to get out of the car when I know I didn't do anything wrong. It happens. I believe it. I know it. It needs to stop. We need policies.
Thank you, Eric. We're going to have to cut it there.
Thought about one other candidate who bragged about the success of how the security for the George Floyd civil unrest was so well planned and implemented, while I struggled to get clear direction from both this candidate and another person. I worked in a building that was actually under her purview, and I was also shipping food to troops on foot during the civil unrest. I never received any security measures for the building, so we created them, another lieutenant and I. I was receiving 2 different messages from this candidate and the person she should have been working together with, leaving me to be somewhere in the middle. My field staff reporting food loss during over-ordering and lunches sitting in the heat in Star Center. I had been offered a job by this candidate in mid-2018, following the opening of the cafe at headquarters. She was impressed with what I had accomplished. Prior to that, I'd never met her. And when I never responded, as this would have been a backward move for me, from a unit commander to operations lieutenant in her shop, she blew me off at a time when they could have helped my unit when in dire straits. With all things, staffing, personnel had told me to reach out to her. Hard to believe the constant comments about the community policing that are on repeat at every forum, but hey, she is at least willing to consider increasing the percentage of Black officers from 8% to say 10% or maybe 15%, and to have 1 or 2 of them on her executive staff.
If elected sheriff, what steps will you take to ensure encouraging and fostering the recruitment and promotion of qualified African American candidates within the department?
Well, first and foremost, I want to raise the percentages, because right now the African American percentages within our department total for all our sworn personnel is 8%. And I wanted to get it up to at least 10 to 15%. But also, if elected, I also want to bring an African American, 1 or 2, onto my executive command staff as well, because I need to make sure that all the ethnic minorities are represented. And whether we agree or disagree, but we work together to make sure that the voices of the community, the voices of our department are heard, so that we can put the best team forward.
One candidate even had protesters at his announcement of candidacy, and I had already got the chance to hear the stories from 2 people I met a few years ago about how he treated them as LAPD. Long Beach PD officers, with those undertones of negative thoughts about race, but didn't mince words about his love, happiness, and deputy wellness now that it was all beneficial for campaigning. Having him shun Eric and I at a church event when Eric was announced as running for sheriff by a friend innocently, we walked onto the stage with he and his officers, and he quickly walked off, only to graciously and so kindly shake my hand in a different setting, at the Union Forum for ALADS and POPA. Maybe for campaignish plugs, I don't know. In all of this, the messaging doesn't line up with some of the things that I am able to see.
They have someone like Luna, who I heard in the beginning, he dealt with his own racism. You know, they used to make fun of him being Latino, and that's why when he became sergeant, And I actually still have a picture. Somebody reported to him that there was a detective who had a picture of different suspects on a family tree. The black dude had a noose next to him on a family tree. An officer went to Luna and, thinking Luna was going to protect him, and Luna outed him. The guys got in trouble for not doing a picture, for doing it on department time, and they got a letter of reprimand. When I heard when Luna became a lieutenant, someone else, a white guy, reported some racism, a detective. And he went to him thinking he was going to be protected from being retaliated, and Luna outed him. And that he just quit because they was retaliating against him so bad, he just quit. And then Luna becomes commander, and he becomes deputy chief, which he was deputy chief for 8 years, and then I think he was chief for another 8 years. So as he brag about his past 20 years, you can talk about past 20 years where no black female has been promoted. You probably didn't hire 5 black females in the last 20 years. And all this time you've been a supervisor, because what Luna liked to do, he liked to deflect, because he's sensitive. So he'll put it on whoever else, but not himself. But he was in a position to make change for at least, because even before he was deputy chief, he was commander. So at least in the last 20 years. So in the last 20 years, he was a commander, a deputy chief, and a chief. And all he did was promote the races.
One candidate claiming to have mentored my husband as a way to step on him, in my opinion, in a very condescending way. It reminds me of a slithering like a snake with the delivery. Bad shootings and pictures of gang signs being thrown up with him in uniform. It's not the tattoos, but actually the activity. So there's that. Not to mention the whispers of an incident in 2012, where he seems to have been able to escape, while 3 others took a fall. And let's not forget the hearings leading to prison for some in 2016, well after he was seated in his new assignment, where he in turn hired the person he shot in friendly fire, working in the city I grew up in. The hired person being one of the 3 in another case. But hey, maybe his swim to Catalina is good enough for removing the chatter of gang affiliation and makes him the only candidate to have made that swim. Thus, best for the position.
1,100 square miles of ocean off the southern coast of California, including Catalina Island. There are 26 nautical miles between the coast and Catalina Island. I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually swam those 26 nautical miles overnight with a dedicated team of professional and sworn staff members.
A newer candidate stating that we have to face it. Another comment about Black and brown people owning it with crime in their neighborhoods. East LA bicycles and pulling out her gun depending on the time of day for the safety of all. Ridiculed for driving while on a Zoom, her demeanor more of that of an upset employee with an axe to grind than someone really interested in running the largest sheriff's department in the world.
The question is, will you discipline deputies that hide their name and badge numbers while on duty? Yes or no?
No. We're not profiling or anything like that. It's just in the communities when these infractions are done, we're going to do our due diligence. Okay, so if we're looking at where we're stopping, the majority of people in East LA is going to be Latino. So if I pull somebody over in a bike, it's going to be a Latino. If I go to Pico Rivera, Latino. If I go to Compton, it's going to be Black or Latino. If I go to South LA, Black or Latino. If I go to Santa Clarita, Palmdale, Lancaster is going to be mostly white. So if we're going to be realistic about this, like Matt Rodriguez has said, let's be realistic about it. And the majority in LA County is going to be Black or Latino. We're not profiling or anything like that. It's just in the communities when these infractions are done, we're going to do our due diligence. And it's now more transparent than ever. Our cameras are there. We indicate the reasons why we do the stop. Most of the time we recover guns, drugs, whatever the case may be, even stolen bikes from kids, from families. Bikes that are like $5,000. I've never seen a bike that costs $5,000, but I learned, but I never understood it. But this is the reality of it. But if we want to fool ourselves and say, you know, we're profiling and stopping Blacks or Latinos, come on, everybody. We need accountability all around. And I'm part of the community.
This is definitely alarming. You know, I'm a Black man that lives in a Black and brown community, and I've been subjected to these traffic stops. And one thing I know in my 30 years of experience, having done thousands of stops, is you can pull up to somebody, ask for their driver's license and registration, walk back and write a ticket. You know, legislation says that traffic stops are inherently dangerous. If it's the traffic stop that's inherently dangerous, then we should do the exact same things that we do in Compton, that we do in Malibu, Lomita, or Cerritos. But data is showing, and as the unit commander of Audit and Accountability Bureau, we did audits, and these tens and tens of thousands of stops, we're not finding a whole lot of stuff on these things. We're just creating numbers. And as one of the candidates said, if we want to fool ourselves, and if we want to fool ourselves that this is not a problem, that is not occurring, then we're going to keep having the same problems that we've been having all along. The reality of it is this. I have the ability to diffuse it. Many people don't. I get pulled over and asked to get out of the car when I know I didn't do anything wrong. It happens. I believe it. I know it. It needs to stop. We need policies.
Thank you, Eric. We're going to have to cut it there.
These people are all smiling for the camera and saying exactly what is needed at the right moment. Some even shake my hand and are ever so gracious now when they only gave dismissive head nods, or I had some personal experience with them before which told a different story. Each showing their real character back then when no one was looking. But they swear to be concerned for all. As a resident of Los Angeles myself, that's scary. I've also been in the department long enough to have witnessed those running who had plenty of time to do all that they were now promising when they were in key positions. It's simply time for a change. The excuse that their hands were tied because of the sheriff, but yet leaning on their high-ranking positions, is doublespeak. Leadership happens because of deciding to do the right thing and can happen at any rank. Even more so with owning when you make a mistake. You learn from it, you move on, you do better. Packaged the right way or going the distance to report wrongdoing is never wrong. And it's not wrong now for me having done so.
How have you changed?
The exact same person, never changed.
People say that the sheriff is the exact same person.
Actually, yes, you are. In an article, Alex's wife said that he was awkward and misunderstood. At least that's the way that it was written. I don't really know how to take that, but I watched him on that CBS and KCAL 9 candidate forum, squirming, smirking, lying on my husband. If I had the opportunity to, I would ask Alex, what did I ever do to you? Why couldn't we leave 2004 in the past? I reported it as I was supposed to. Even bigger question, why do you hold on to things and then return them when it benefits you? I was just doing my job.
Villanueva told his new deputies this.
So all of this hinges on your ability to do the right thing. And sometimes it's not going to be the most popular thing.
All this And I haven't even started with the details of the missing money and the molded bread. You see, they came for me. Wow.
Count, Canes delayed, Canes count, Canes count. Dedication, integrity, interrupted when they came for me. Hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it.